there's all these other reasons that people are finding your company that are not SEO related. But if you just say, oh, well, they came from organic search, they came from SEO, you're totally wrong.
This is Metrics and Chill, where you'll learn practical strategies to drive consistent and predictable growth.
Chris, thank you so much for coming on Metrics and Chill. For listeners, we're going to be covering the topic of getting good marketing attribution data on opportunities in the sales pipeline. Chris is an expert at this. This is part of what you do, working with RevOps specialists at ClearPivot, right?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of ClearPivot. I actually started it over 15 years ago, back in 2009. Originally, it was growing out of just freelance work I was doing originally. Over a couple of years, we kind of built up a client list a little bit, hired some other people, and now we're about a team of 8 or so. But yeah, so we're a revenue operations, marketing operations consulting company, and so we're doing a lot of CRM build outs, operations, data management, a lot of attribution projects, dashboarding and other analytics projects, sales pipeline management, sometimes integrations between systems, things like that. And our primary platform expertise is HubSpot. That's the platform we're best at. And then with a lot of our clients, they're running a HubSpot Salesforce setup together. So we do a fair amount of that as well.
Nice. Love it. To set the stage, can you maybe talk a little bit about, I know you alluded to you used to use web analytics primarily for attribution, and that was sort of the state of the world, I think, for a lot of companies. What did that look like? And then why was that not good enough? Why did there need to be advances on top of that? And why do you start incorporating other ways to look at attribution?
Looking back in retrospect, it was really like the whole 2010s decade was, the marketing world really got almost entirely focused on basically web analytics sources. And in retrospect, I think it was probably Google Analytics that ended up setting the conversation for everyone and basically got everyone in the marketing world thinking that, the only things that matter in your marketing sourcing are organic search, direct traffic, referral traffic, email traffic. And that was how we measured it too, primarily for a long time. The big limitations of that is that it just doesn't give all the information you need. It'll break down to 40% direct traffic, 30% organic search, and then the remaining 30% kind of divided between a couple other small things from there. Direct traffic itself really just means they don't know where it came from. There's no tracking info available. And for a long time, people said, oh, well, that's just people typing in your URL directly into their web browser. But are you really saying that there's 8,000 people every month typing in www.companyname.com into your web browser? Most likely, probably not. They just couldn't pick it up for one technical reason or another. And so kind of across the board, you're looking at typically 40% of your traffic is just a black box. You don't even know where it came from. And then for the, 30% or so that shows up as organic search, that's often very misleading too. Because people say, oh, wow, we're doing good SEO. We got to do more keyword research and stuff like that. But then a lot of times the organic traffic, even if a lot of direct traffic is not people typing in your URL into their browser bar, a lot of your organic traffic is typically people searching for your company name in Google. So it's not actually your SEO keywords that are bringing them in. They're just Google searching your name. And so there's all these other reasons that people are finding your company that are not SEO related. But if you just say, oh, well, they came from organic search, they came from SEO, you're totally wrong.
And of course, all the ramifications of all of this is that teams are not able to invest in the channels that might be driving those results more to scale them more.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of that, things like, direct response ads like LinkedIn ads and Google ads, those actually work pretty well with web analytics. Those are some of the most reliably measured things in web analytics. So that creates a bias towards that. Oh, well, let's just, we can track this easier. So let's just put more money into our Google ads, or let's just put more money into our LinkedIn ads.
Why do you think there wasn't more a prompt to look outside the box of web analytics back in that time?
I think part of the reason was it was free. And so they released it was free, fairly easy to use. So everyone went out and installed it. That was like the peak of, SEO agencies. And so they all started using Google Analytics to make their SEO reports and things like that. So Google Analytics really kind of became the default paradigm. Then when other tools came along, like when HubSpot later on built their web analytics tools, their web analytics basically followed the same conventions, same channel conventions as Google Analytics. And so that reinforced it further from there.
The move from web analytics as like sort of like two-dimensional now to this more three-dimensional blended version you're using, what does that include? Like you mentioned, I think that's web, and now you're doing self-reported at the contact source level. What does that look like sort of practically for listeners? Like this means that you're looking at web, but then you're also looking at like where the user states that they first heard about you, or the most impactful way that drove them to you, and then you're blending these together in some way?
Yeah, what we started doing was, we first learned about self-reported attribution from Chris Walker, probably like a lot of people out there. But it was after several years of me kind of having the same kind of frustrating client calls. Oh yeah, and here's another month with 40% direct traffic and not much else to say there. So we had been seeing the limitations already. And then, so we decided to start trying it as well. And so we started adding just adding the how did you hear about us field to web forms. One thing that I think is really important to do is to make it an open text field. And a lot of companies will have like their own predefined select list already. But I'm really not a fan of using that, because that's biasing the results by making them choose from your own pre-selected options. So that's why we like to just keep it a pure open text field. In general, when in your CRM, you oftentimes want to avoid open text fields for a lot of analytics data. But we want to start with having them just tell us, be open to whatever they tell us in a text field. And then, in the next step, we internally can then kind of filter it down into more structured data internally. And so then we started rolling that out on a couple of client accounts. And we definitely discovered, a lot of lead sources that the web analytics were not capturing. Especially the biggest ones are word of mouth, referrals, even like local things. Yes, a lot of people started filling out the web analytics would say, organic search, or direct traffic, oftentimes organic search. But then when they would say, how did they hear about us? They would say, oh, my friend told me about you. Or, my sister told me about you. Or for a couple of our medical clients, it would be, my doctor told me about you. My doctor referred me to you. Or even I live nearby. Like one of our clients is a senior living center. A huge amount of their people are people saying, "Oh, I live nearby," and it was like double-digit percentages of the total leads coming in where people are saying this.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, this tracks very much with our experience. We do a similar thing so far, at least, where we'll ask the open text field, and then we've got this set of checkboxes on HubSpot on the back end that we will like read the response.
So yes, we started taking that just raw information that they were putting in, and so then what we would do is then we would make a new lead source property, and we would define on that new lead source property, that would be a structured select list of options from there. So like the lead source options will break down to like, it'll be like word of mouth, search engine, existing customer. That's another big one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll click through some of our dashboards here. Foot traffic. For some companies, foot traffic is a big one. TV advertising, sometimes even employee connections.
Okay.
Agency or directory referrals. So these are examples of different categories from some of our real life clients. I mean, we work in HubSpot, so we generally build all of this in HubSpot. And so we'll set up a HubSpot workflow to help us automate it as much as possible. We can't automate every edge case we get for whatever random thing people might type in. But we can automate, maybe 70% of it. We'll put in things like if how did you hear about us contains coworker, colleague, friend, brother, mother, things like that. We can say, if that field contains these words, set lead source to word of mouth.
Okay. Do you compare the two side by side? Like, do you see that like certain types, has this helped you see that, for example, oh yeah, most word of mouth referrals or friend referrals end up as like organic on web analytics? Like, have you been able to see a correlation in that?
Yeah. Word of mouth and referrals is almost always in the web analytics. It'll show up as either organic search or direct traffic. If you're running like Google ads for your own name, you'll probably get word of mouth people coming in through the Google ads. If you're not running Google ads for your own name, the word of mouth people are probably not going to come in through that. So then we typically, if they come in through a Google ad or a LinkedIn ad or a Facebook ad, we'll log the source for those as literally the Google ad or Facebook ad or something.
Got it. Yeah. Makes sense. And so far, all of this is at the contact level. You said like you're not yet in the deal phase. You're not yet passing this through to the deal phase, or are you at this stage?
This is all setting the choosing our origination source for the contacts themselves.
Okay.
So then the next step from there is then, the goal of bringing in people is to, create a deal for them and build your sales pipeline from there. They're a separate object from the contacts, and sometimes they'll have multiple contacts associated with them. And then in the deals themselves, oftentimes there could be other like sales specific sources in addition to the marketing sources. So then we'll typically make a separate deal source property on the deal record itself. And it'll oftentimes have many of the same options as the contact source, but there will oftentimes be additional options as well. Like we're working with one company right now where, they have a medium-sized sales team, and the sales team is doing their own prospecting, calling through their own Rolodex of connections. So salespeople are sourcing some leads themselves. Couple of our B2B clients, they have distribution partners or value-added reseller partners, and those partners will bring in deals as well. So those are often more sales-specific lead sources. And so on the deal record, we'll build out a deal source list that includes some of those more sales-focused ones, like sales prospecting as one, or just salesperson generated one way or another, partner generated, channel partner or reseller partner generated as options, and then oftentimes some of the marketing options in addition to that.
Okay.
And so then you look at, you'll oftentimes need the salesperson's cooperation or collaboration as well. So then you basically populate your deal source based on, this is where you really have to work with the sales team, because especially if there's multiple contacts associated with them, then you have to decide what your rules of engagement are going to be. Like, do we want to do this on the first contact associated with the deal? That's what we typically do. The source of the first contact associated with the deal will copy over to the deal itself. Unless the contact is already in the system.
So say there's like 3 contacts associated with a deal. Your rule is we look at the first contact generated in the CRM. We look at the self-reported attribution source and we pass that over and trust that as the attribution source for the deal, or do I have that wrong a little bit?
That's usually the default. There's always edge cases when you talk to the salespeople and they say, "Oh, well, that was actually, we talked, I called them 3 months ago or something, and then they came in later." So there's some edge cases like that, but the default usually is, let's take the first contact associated with the deal. We'll look at the blended lead source we chose for that contact, and then we'll mark the deal source accordingly.
Got it. Okay. How, especially with the advent of AI and things like Avoma and Gong, I'm surprised I don't see more people talking about just having sales folks ask, "How did you hear about us?" Setting that as like a tracker question that you like, the call recording software like automatically records the answer to and puts as like just a secondary sort of self-reported attribution where, they might put LinkedIn on the form, but then on the sales call, they might explain, "Oh, I saw one of your LinkedIn ads," just being able to get a little bit more detail or nuance, or, and then like using that as a third point. And I'm curious if like, there's a reason why I haven't seen more of that. Like maybe it's more complicated than it's worth, or you don't get that many new insights, but I'm curious your take on that.
There's certainly no harm in doing it outside of just adding an additional step to the process. That's probably, that could be valid to check. Maybe we could try it ourselves. The main reason people aren't really doing it is just like, it's just one more thing to do.
Yeah. It's
but
making sure.
it could very well be worth trying as an additional double check step. Yeah. One potential downside is, say someone, requests a demo or fills out a contact form or something, and then they book a time and the demo time is like 2 weeks later or something. And then they might not remember 2 weeks later as clearly how they found you by the time they actually talk to the salesperson.
That makes sense. This has been super helpful to like hear how you've walked through the process. And for listeners, I feel like it's a great blueprint to follow. I'm curious, have there been any surprising insights customers have uncovered through this with you that has changed maybe marketing strategy, or where they've invested budget, or something they thought was working well that it turns out is not?
Yeah. The most common thing we see is word of mouth going from like being completely not on their radar to realizing, oh, 25% of our business is word of mouth. That's the most common thing we see, um, for just how much word of mouth is is a big such a big contributor, to their deal pipeline. Um, One surprising thing was for one of our clients, seeing just how many people were coming from foot traffic, or people who just lived in the area. That was I'm looking at it now. That's like 15 to 20%
Oh,
of
wow.
yeah, their total volume of people just saying, "Oh, I live nearby." So that was a surprising one to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine these kind of insights are super useful to people that maybe, in 2025 are like over indexing on SEO or something, or thinking this is like the main source driver for them, or they're running Google ads and they don't realize the ways that these Google ads, showing up for their own name are like complicating all this reporting, right? And actually it's like this whole other slew of thing that's driving the results, but the Google ad is throwing everything off. So I feel like that would be I feel like for a lot of companies that are doing it, they're going to uncover a lot of new insights the first time they go through this.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of companies, they put too much focus on SEO, um, especially because we haven't even gotten into like lead quality, like the quality of the leads you get from word of mouth and your organic branding and your organic exposure. The quality of contacts you're getting are on average going to be significantly better leads than the ones that you get from people Google searching for the keywords optimized for.
Yeah. Is that something you'll help clients track? Like, will you go down to like win rates or close rates based on the source? And do you see that being true? Like the SEO, the truly like organic SEO searches or paid ad searches don't do as well as like the more, social brand building type things where they've followed you for a while?
We'll do we'll track like pipeline totals, this amount of closed deals from this source, that amount of closed deals from that source, this amount of revenue from this source and that source. Sometimes we get into close rates. With one client in particular, uh, we've done a lot of looking at close rates, because they got like 60-70% of their leads were coming from these directory sites.
Hmm.
And so they always thought, oh, wow, we like live or die based on these directory sites. And then we did some close rate reports for them and found the close rate was abysmal. The close rate was like 1.5% or something like
Wow.
that. So they're getting like 1,000 leads a year from these directory sites, and they would close 1.5% of them versus the other lead sources they would close like 20%.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
like tenfold difference.
That's amazing. Uh, I know there's a lot of tools in our space that are looking at multi-touch attribution. Which do you like recommend clients go with, and sort of why? Like, is there a lot of utility to multi-touch attribution? Just curious of your take on that.
Yeah. There could be some utility, but it's definitely not the magic bullet that sometimes people are hoping it'll be. Um, One of the biggest things I've seen is, if multi-touch attribution is a great way to start incorporating your email, seeing if your email might be contributing to your pipeline at all. Because I think email marketing is super powerful, but that doesn't show up in your single source attribution. Definitely not original source, because you can't email them before they've even converted. So just looking at original source attribution by itself does underplay the value of your email marketing with them over time after that. It also depends on how long your sales cycle is. If you have if your sales cycle is like 3 months or less, it's probably not that valuable to do multi-touch attribution, because there's just not going to be a lot of marketing activities in that time frame. If your sales cycle is like 18 months, like some of our clients are, 12 months, 18 months, that's, multi-touch is going to be more useful there, where there's more time for marketing activities to be involved. Yeah, it's you have to kind of remember what it's actually showing is. It's basically saying, here's, for these 10 deals last month, here are the contacts with the deals. Here's the different tagged campaigns they interacted with over the last 12 months or something. You could say, oh, well, of all of our closed won deals, 10 of them opened emails, 5 of them went to this webinar, and then, when you're doing the multi-touch, then you start assigning percentage values based on that. 20% email contribution, or, 10%, 15% webinar contribution. So it's, but the thing it doesn't show is it doesn't show causation. So it's great to see like correlated stuff. Oh, the people on this deal opened a bunch of our emails, or the people on this deal, attended this webinar or attended this trade show, or they visited these pages on the site. But you'll never know the answer to, oh, well, what if we didn't send that email? Would we have lost the deal? What if we didn't have that page? Would we have lost the deal?
Right.
Yeah, it can never answer what if.
Yeah.
Fortunately, most things in life you can never answer what if. Yeah.
Yeah, very true.
So yeah, as long as you just remember that and keep that in mind at the outset, it can be an additional supplemental report.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that take. I guess my final question would be, for people that are trying to do this the first time, you all have been doing this for years, you're HubSpot, and so, you're RevOps pros, like, is there anything to watch out for? Any guidance, any advice that you would give them?
Things to watch out for. For the web analytics, make sure it's set up correctly. Make sure the tracking codes on all your pages. Make sure you're, if you have multiple subdomains, make sure they're not showing up as referral traffic between each other. Make sure those are excluded from referral traffic. For the self-reported, you can get started and just add in that field onto it, and then just start looking in your contact database. Run a list of contacts with a couple columns for the web analytics traffic and a column for what they're telling you for the self-reported attribution. Just start looking through it and qualitatively, and start seeing the patterns from there. And then from there you can start deciding what your kind of more structured lead source list is going to be from there. And then of course, just remember, for any new change, you're not going to have the historical data, so you just have to accept that. It's really difficult to like backfill historical data, so you just have to know that this is a new way of measuring it that you're starting, as of the day you're starting.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Chris, thanks so much for coming on, for sharing your blueprint for doing this, how you all do it, some of the insights. Um, if people want to work with you, if listeners, newsletter readers want to work with you, who's a good fit for you? Where should they find you? Where should they follow you? Give them all that stuff.
Yeah, the best, we work best with companies, kind of medium-sized companies, which we define as companies of 100 to 1,000 employees in total. Do a lot of different types of, worked with a lot of software companies, cybersecurity companies, couple different types of professional services companies are some of the most common ones we work with. And we're usually 2/3 of the time we're working with the marketing people, 1/3 of the time we're working with a sales leader, and sometimes people who, the ops people or rev ops people or the marketing person designated to also be the rev ops person, kind of straddling the line. And you can find us. Probably the best way is through our website, clearpivot.com. Clearpivot.com. You can find us through there. Contact us. I try to be pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So you can look me up on LinkedIn. My name is Chris Strom, Strom. So that's a great way too. And we have a newsletter and a podcast ourselves. The RevOps Hero is what it's called. The RevOps Hero podcast and the RevOps Hero newsletter. So if you're not a good time to work with us yet, you can still subscribe to one of those and follow along with what we're putting it out.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeremiah.